Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Extra Point Podcast. I am Andrew Goldberg, and I'm joined, as always, by Adam Levine. Usually we're joined by Dan Schneider and Eddie Pascal, but both of them couldn't make it tonight. And Adam, I guess we should say that they won't be joining us anymore just because they're so busy with obligations. I mean, Dan writes for football, Pro Football Focus, which is a great site. He does a bunch of other podcasts, so he was kind of feeling stretching thin, as well as working for Fox Sports. And that Eddie, if anyone wants to tweet at him at Eddie Pascal, he just got hired by the Oakland Raiders. So, I mean, that's awesome for him, and we're very happy for him. I assume he's going to keep working with us on Fox Sports. But, good job, Eddie. You can tweet at him at Eddie Pascal. You can tweet at Dan Schneider at Dan Schneider NFL, and you could tweet at me at AGberg12, and you can tweet at Adam Levine at Blue Collar God. A little different than everyone else's, but that's because everything else was taken apparently.
When you have the name Adam Levine and there's a lead singer who was voted the sexiest man alive at one point with the same name as you except with an E at the end of his last name, it's very hard to get a lot of freed up handles or anything like that.
That's not you. You're not the Maroon 5 guy? I was under the assumption I was with the Maroon 5 the whole time.
Oh, well, I like to consider myself the sexiest man alive, but no, I'm not the Maroon 5 guy.
Well, that's disappointing to our couple of viewers, and our listeners, and they listen back, because I'm sure they were really thinking that Adam Levine really knows his NFL stuff. He's a musician.
Yeah, what's he doing on the board?
I mean, this guy is a jack of all trades.
I can sing and I can prognosticate.
Yeah. Well, he probably does know his NFL, but he's certainly better at singing, I'm sure. Anyway, let's talk about the NFL, because it was a crazy Week 5 that featured a number of comeback games. I think about 3 or 4 comeback games. The Browns versus the Titans. The Titans were down 25 and then stormed back to win 29-28. The Giants were down 10 and came back to win 30-20. The Saints won in overtime over the lowly Buccaneers. The Bills go on the road after switching quarterbacks to Kyle Orton and win on a last-second field goal, or I shouldn't say last second, but they win on a 58-yard field goal, which we'll get into in a second. And then, there was the Jets losing badly, and the Patriots quieting everyone and showing everyone why they are the default division winners until someone actually unseats them come Week 17. I mean, what were your initial thoughts after Monday Night Football, after the Seahawks beat the Washington Redskins 28-17? Adam, what were your initial thoughts after this whole entire week?
Oh, after the whole week? Well, a few things. Number one, the Jets are that bad, but we all knew that. I mean, I knew that the Jets would be dragged out and played out because they're in the New York market and they're interesting because they're a circus, but they just proved how terrible they are on offense and the like. Seahawks, same old Seahawks, they look good, although I will say they worried me a bit on the road. And I don't like the fact that they got all these accepted penalties. I think they need to clean up the penalties. And on offense, they're not the best. But they're still the Seahawks. They're still dominant. Lions have to get a new kicker. The kicking game is what killed them in that Bills game. They had a number of chances to wrap that game up with a kick. They couldn't do it. They've already gone through 2 kickers. They're about to go to a third. And Matt Prater, who was released by the Broncos. So they got to get the kicking game and Matt Lyons' protection cleared up, because those are really the only 2 things holding them back from maybe running away with the division. Browns' biggest road comeback in NFL history. Brian Hoyer looks like the man. The Eagles' offense is not doing, what we thought it might do, but their defense and special teams is coming alive, so maybe they are for real in all facets. And, boy, the Giants, just when you think that you can write them off, you can't. Just when you think Tom Coughlin's about to leave, it's about ready to get rid of the Eli Manning era, which we discussed in detail. I still don't think he's elite, but still, just when you think they're about ready to part ways with Eli Manning and Tom Coughlin, they're 3-2. Their offense looks miles better than it did in the preseason, and they look like they could really contend for the NFC East. And a big win by Dallas, although this week against Seattle will prove a lot to me. So that's what I kind of took away.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all those points. I mean, we both know that the NFL is a huge overreactionary league. I mean, week by week, you will have one opinion going into this week, into week 6 now, and it'll change instantly come Monday after Monday Night Football. I mean, it's just the state of the NFL and what it is now. You know, the Giants went 0-2 to start the season. They looked dreadful against the Lions. They looked bad against the Cardinals. Well, actually not bad. They actually probably could have beaten the Cardinals, save for some Victor Cruz drops, which he dropped like 5 passes. But, you know, everyone can blame Eli still. And then they win 3 in a row, and now I'm seeing articles about, you know, and people talking about the Giants being dark horse contenders. So that's certainly a flip the script type of thing. And then, of course, everyone was on the Patriots. You know, this is the end of the Patriots. This is why the possibly were thinking of making a quarterback move, which they eventually did in the Chargers game, but we'll get to that in a second, to win the AFC East. And the same thing with the Bills and why they changed to Kyle Orton, and for one game at least, which, you know, you and both I know because I cover the Bills, you cover the Lions in the NFC North, that the Lions missed 3 field goals because Alex Henry, who was previously on the Eagles, got signed because their previous kicker, I think it was a rookie, I forget his name, he got cut. He wasn't hacking it.
No. Yeah,
so
Nate Freese is that rookie.
The Bills hit a field goal, and there you go. And it's flip-flopping every week.
No, yeah. With the Lions, I mean, the kicking game, it cost them that game. It's been laughable how bad it's been. I mean, they get rid of Jason Hansen after, you know, over 20 years, and, you know, they have this kicker battle in the preseason, but the guy who looked the best in preseason, they got rid of for Nate Freese, who looked terrible. Alex Henry was terrible, and now they're hoping on Matt Prater. And, you know, they should have beaten the Bills. I mean, they really should have. They held them to 14 points. They really held them down rushing. They're doing everything else well with the exception of, like I said before, protecting Matt Stafford. But other than that, they're doing everything else well, running the ball well, maintaining in the passing game, even though Calvin Johnson's been hurt. Matt Stafford's been very good about spreading the ball around and not getting a lot of picks. Good defense. They've been massively improved on all levels, but the kicking game really bit them in the butt in that game against the Bills. And then how classless was Jim Schwartz? What's he doing? He cleared out of a Week 5 regular game? That's...
yeah, it was like they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, come on. It's like a regular season game. You're not Rocky. I mean, not Rocky. Freaking, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. You're not Rudy. Not Rudy.
Yeah, it was pretty classless. It was pretty Jim Schwartz, I'll say that. You want to talk about a guy who thinks a lot of himself, it's that guy. One thing I wanted to mention, though, is getting back to the Week 5 stuff. Well, first of all, number one, the Patriots, and we kind of said this on last week's podcast, that it would either be ugly for the Patriots or they do what the Patriots do, which is tell everyone, you know what, we're still here. And they certainly did that. I mean, what a impressive route. I mean, they shut everybody up, and Bill Belichick's "we're on to Cincinnati" is now one of his legendary statements that'll be used from here on out. That was pretty impressive. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Every team is using it. Like every team, even Adrian Peterson's agent Rusty Hardin was joking about it, which is a terrible job by him to joke about it in a very serious situation. He was like, "Oh, we're on to the next trial, or we're on to like whatever." It's like you don't say that. But getting back to the Patriots, I mean, Darrelle Revis looked like the guy. Revis Island, essentially, is what I'm getting to. Tom Brady looked great. The offensive line looked like all their issues were solved, even though they were going against a very good Bengals defense. But maybe the Bengals were a little overrated because they didn't play that great of a schedule going into it. They were 3-0 heading in, obviously, and they were coming off a bye week. But they played Tennessee the week before, who they killed. Atlanta, who you can say, I don't know what you can really say about Atlanta because they're so much different on the road than they are at home, but they beat them 24-10. And then, you know, they got a good win against Baltimore, but that game was really fluky because both times, you know, it looked like a really bad game, and then the only way the Bengals scored was on a tip ball by A.J. Green and a tip ball by Steve Smith for the Ravens. So, I mean, maybe the Bengals just aren't that good. They just got, the luck of the draw and the lucky bounce. But, hey, look, I mean, we were talking on that conference call. The Patriots are the team to beat in the AFC East just by default. The other teams are so bad that it doesn't matter how bad the Patriots look. They can afford to just do whatever they want because they know they can survive, and the other teams are just going to play themselves out of it. I mean, that's why the Bills made the change to Kyle Orton, and then all the players on the team essentially said this week, like, hey, we need to change to Kyle Orton. Like, Fred Jackson was behind it, like, immediately. Sammy Watkins came out and said that he noticed that the ball was coming out faster, which is something you probably shouldn't say, given the fact that they're trying to develop E.J. Manuel, but here you are, and the Patriots are who we thought they were, stealing a line from Dennis Green and the Cardinals. But,
they are who we thought they were. I will say one thing about the Bengals. They are always a little bit better. They're dominant at home. On the road, they're kind of like a poor man's Seattle Seahawks or an AFC version of the Seattle Seahawks, which has been the poor man's conference the last few years. The one impressive thing they did do when they beat Atlanta, the Ravens game was fluky, you're right. And the Tennessee game, I mean, Tennessee, since that Chiefs win, has been one of the worst teams in the world. But,
terrible.
Yeah, but the Bengals did hold down that Atlanta offense. And that Atlanta offense, I know they are 2-4, but that Atlanta offense has been very, very good outside of that Cincinnati game, and I mean, really, even in the Giants win, which is why I'm scared about the Giants, because I still think that their defense is not up to snuff. But I also wanted to talk about this result, and you brought it up. How bad do the Saints look? I mean, you're telling me you have to survive against Tampa Bay at home? At home, they usually destroy people, and they had to come back against Tampa Bay at home? They officially... I'm scared about them. I don't think they're going to be good at all this season. They look awful.
Yeah, I mean, getting to that game, they were down 11 points twice to the Bucs, and this was a team, the Buccaneers. Everyone said, "Wow, I don't think Lovie Smith is going to last the season," because they got beaten so bad by Atlanta on Thursday Night Football that it looked like they were going to be the worst team in the NFL. And the Saints, everyone had Super Bowl aspirations for those guys. I mean, Drew Brees, as great as he is, he really has not played well over the entire season. If you really look at the statistics, he had not played over the season. He has 1,574-yard passing, but he has 9 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's pretty bad. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions last week.
It is, and he's also looked bad too. The stats have been bad, and he's also looked noticeably like he looks uncomfortable in the pocket, and he's missing a lot of throws, and he's making a lot of dumb decisions. And you're like, what's wrong with Drew Brees? That defense has given up a ton of yards. I mean, I know they rely a lot on the turnover, but they are just giving up yard after yard after yard, letting bad teams take leads on them that they have to come back from. Their running game looks okay, but just across the board, they look really awful. I know they won, but they should have housed Tampa Bay, and the fact that they were even down 11 to Tampa Bay at home is just. I can understand maybe in Tampa, but at home, forget that you're division rivals and you know each other. I mean, that was a really, really scary win. If I'm a Saints fan, I'm scared about that team.
Yeah, and we saw that happen when they went 0-2. And they were going to thankfully play Minnesota without Adrian Peterson, but they only beat a Minnesota team without Adrian Peterson 20-6, and that was at home. I mean,
20-9. 20-9.
Bad too.
Minnesota covered that game. What road opponent never covers in the dome? But they did. Crazy.
Yeah, just a terrible job. And speaking of terrible jobs, as you had pointed out the week before, when Cleveland, that week I should say. Cleveland came back 25 down, largest road victory, like you said, in NFL history. I want to get to the quarterback situation there because they drafted Johnny Manziel in the first round. Okay, they're not going to keep him on the bench as a first rounder, obviously. They're going to put him in eventually, whether it's at the end of the year when their season's just totally done or they're out of playoff contention. But right now they're in the mix. And Brian Hoyer, okay, he's not a superstar, okay, but he's making smart decisions. He's bringing this team back, and he's playing very, very well for a team with not a lot of options on the outside. He's throwing to Travis Benjamin and Miles Austin. Miles Austin hasn't been relevant since 2011, I think. Otherwise, he's been bothered by hamstring injuries for the whole entire, the last 3 years. But, I mean, he has nobody, and he's handing the ball off to Ben Tate, who's been a career backup, and he's been injured the last 2 weeks, and then they've been handing it off to Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West, who I understand that both guys had really good college careers, one coming from Georgia and Crowell, and West coming from Towson, who everyone was high on going into the NFL draft. But these are rookies. I mean, I was listening to the Grantland podcast, Bill Barnwell and Joe Mays, I think his name is, and they were talking about how great the offensive line is in Cleveland. I mean, I don't know how Cleveland's doing it. I don't know if it's just because Tennessee is really, really bad, or because Cleveland's actually pretty solid.
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of the two. First of all, Tennessee is bad. I mean, I like Ken Wisenhunt. He has nothing to work with there, so I'm not going to blame him for their offensive struggles. They're just bad. That roster is awful. The Browns, I think, are also a little bit good. I mean, they've been sneaky interesting. I mean, even their losses have been close. I mean, they took Pittsburgh they came back on Pittsburgh, took them to the wire, and almost had a chance to beat Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was lucky to even win that game. They've barely lost to their. I think they also played the Ravens and barely lost to them, or they might have even beaten them. But their 2 losses have been very close, and their 2 wins have been pretty good. I think that Browns team is interesting, and you know what? I wouldn't mess with it right now for Johnny Manziel. I mean, Brian Hoyer, he's not an elite talent, but he's doing what he needs to do, and that team, win, lose, or draw, they're in every game that they play. They're not getting blown out when they lose. They're winning some gutty games. They have good defense. Brian Hoyer is making the throws he needs to throw with, you're right, a terrible, terrible set of playmakers. I mean, nobody. I mean, Jordan Cameron's their best playmaker, and he's good, but everyone else outside of that is terrible, and they're still 2-2 in an AFC North that's competitive, yeah, but, maybe, I mean, we don't know anything. I don't know anything about that division still. I came into it not knowing anything about that division. I still don't, considering Baltimore, the way they lost to Indy, even though I know Indy has Andrew Luck, they were the better roster. Pittsburgh's been up and down. The Bengals, what are they outside of Cincinnati? Man, I wouldn't mess with it right now. I'd leave Brian Hoyer in because maybe they got something there in Cleveland with him.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And just the last note on the point differential in all these games, they lost to Pittsburgh, they beat us by 2, to Baltimore by 2, and they beat Tennessee by 1. So all 4 games have been determined by a total of 3, 5, 7, 8 points.
Yeah.
8 points. I mean, Pettin's doing. If Cleveland gets anywhere close to the playoffs, like if they're 9-7 at the end of the year and they just missed the playoffs, honestly, I think Pettin should be coach of the year.
So do I, because even their losses to the Ravens and the Steelers, who have better rosters than them and have always owned them, I mean, the Steelers and the Ravens were relying on walk-off field goals. I mean, that's impressive to me if you're the Browns, who the Browns should have been blown out, but instead they're holding their division rivals to having to beat them on walk-off field goals. I think you're right. I think if Pettin gets them to 8-8, 9-7, and even their losses are close and every game is really close and a nail-biter, and they barely miss the playoffs, he should be coach of the year, and he should get a contract extension because that's really doing well with not a lot. I mean, not a lot on the roster at all.
Absolutely. And, I mean, the only other big takeaways that I really took from the week is the Eagles' offense you kind of highlighted, or well, actually the Eagles' team. They're the only team in history to score 7 different ways this season, and their offense just looks bad. I understand that their offensive line was missing 4 guys the week before, and they might have been missing 3 because Lane Johnson came back, but LaShawn McCoy is not running well, and therefore that offense, the Chip Kelly offense, is not looking as potent, but somehow they've still scored 30 points every game. I mean, it's really baffling that they're still in this, but I think they might be like that. NFC East is we highlighted it on the last on our last episode. that AFC East is ultra competitive, especially with the Giants' resurgence here.
Right.
The Giants look like dark horses. The Eagles might be overrated. Like, we don't know because they played 4 bad teams and they've had to come back twice in the first 2 weeks, and in the last 2 weeks they've had really close games. I mean, last week Augustin Davis-led Rams team, they only won by 6. Their only good win is Indianapolis. They beat by 3, but Indianapolis almost came back and beat them.
Right.
But
and they're one. And they had that loss to San Francisco, which was that one team on the schedule you looked at and be like, I want to see how they do against San Francisco, and they lost. But no, I mean, I agree with you. That NFC East is tougher than we might think it is, and maybe that Eagles team is for real. Maybe, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just, beating up bad opponents or opponents early on who don't have film on them yet. Or maybe they'll get to the Super Bowl because their defense and special teams will be good, even if Nick Foles is terrible. Like you said, we don't know yet, but it has been strangely competitive in a division that we all expected, even people who cover the NFC East, we all expected, this division is probably going to be terrible. Hasn't been terrible so far.
Yeah, especially at the beginning of the year. But I mean, okay, let's be honest. I think we've avoided this subject for far too long.
Okay.
The New York Jets. I mean, my God, it has just been a absolute roller coaster ride covering this team in the AFC East. I mean, you get blown out 31-0. Your quarterbacks combined for less than 100 yards passing. You replace Mike Vick at the half, and he throws for 47 yards. This team looked just terrible. And the next day, a report comes out that Geno Smith missed a Saturday meeting to go see a movie. Who knows what he was seeing? He could have been seeing Gone Girl, which I've heard is a great film. You could have been seeing Dolphin Tale 2. I have no idea. And apparently you can't tell time, even though your phone tells you and switches times when you switch time zones. It's baffling. And then yesterday, or earlier today, it was kind of both, last night and earlier today, Michael Vick says, I didn't really care when I was on the scout team. This is Michael Vick. This isn't some rookie, okay? This is Michael freaking Vick, the guy who they signed for $2 million, who they thought they were going to replace with Geno Smith. If anything went wrong, he admits that he wasn't even taking practice seriously. And then you have players saying that the effort in practice is not good. Mario Davis, a linebacker for them, said the same thing. This is a mess. I mean, I feel bad for Rex Ryan because, he is – it's like hard for me to say. I think he's a pretty good coach. You can't take away the fact that he made 2 AFC championship games with Mark Sanchez, but then the last 3 years, they've been bad. They've been a laughingstock, and he should really be blamed. Some of it falls on John Idzik. There's just plenty of blame to go around. I don't know what's going on with the Jets franchise. I don't think anyone does. The only bit of optimism I saw was on Grantland. Bill Barnwell wrote a piece that says the Jets know what they're doing, and it was actually an enlightening piece because John Idzik, he's over from the Seattle Seahawks. He's trying to build them, the Jets, that is, that way, in the Seahawks mold. They were $20 million under the cap. They didn't spend on a cornerback or anything like that, but they also get a rollover into next year for cap. There's, they haven't had any. I heard a stat on the radio. I think it was ESPN radio or just 98.7 here in New York, that they only have 1 draft pick from I think it was 2008 to about 2010, and it's Kyle Wilson. You can't build a team like that. You just can't.
No.
And that's how sad it is. 1 draft pick. It's nuts.
Well, I'm sure it's a roller coaster ride covering the Jets. Look, the NFC North is fun, but their teams are very even the Bears, who are like the roller coaster ride of that division, or the Lions, who are historically always a roller coaster ride, or historically always bad. Nothing has probably been as fun to cover in my division as the Jets seem to be. And I'll tell you, I think that's why they're even being discussed, because they are a circus. And, you said Rex Ryan was a good coach. I've always struggled with that. Mark Sanchez got to 2 straight AFC championship games. He really did that with the rosters that came before him, I feel like, more than he did it with his own rosters. Because he's a great defensive mind, don't get me wrong. But when he got rid of all these corners, his defenses in Baltimore and in general are predicated on scheme blitzes. So you need good man-to-man corners. Now, the Jets don't have that. They have D. Miller and these guys from Alabama who will wind up never panning out, who have not been able to do the job in the secondary. And on offense, I think it's partially Itzik, and I think it's partially Rex Ryan just being dumb on that side of the ball. They have no offensive talent. They haven't had offensive talent for the last 3 years. Eric Decker, big whoop. Your other receivers can't even get separation. I mean, Jeremy Curley, come on. This is I think, a glaring indictment on how Rex Ryan is a one-side-of-the-ball guy, which means he should be a coordinator, not a coach. A great defensive coordinator, not a good head coach. I don't care that the team played hard for him and got him to 8-8 last year with a bad roster. He's proven that he's a coordinator, not a coach. John Idzik, he may be trying to build Seattle East, but in order to build Seattle East, you need a Percy Harvin of some type, and they don't have that at all. This team is just not there on offense, and that's what's killing them. And their secondary is terrible, with Seattle's secondary is not, and I think the blame falls on both guys. I think Itzik needs more time to develop in there, but I think they need to get rid of Rex or demote him to a coordinator, because I think he's a good defensive coordinator, and I think he could work with the talent they have on the D-line. But you got to demote this guy. He's not a head coach. I don't care what anybody says. Bruce Arians is a head coach. Rex Ryan is, a guy you can have a beer with and a great defensive coordinator, but he's just not a head coach in my mind.
Yeah, he's essentially Norv Turner of the defense. That's how I see it. Exactly. Norv Turner is a great offensive mind. He's gotten all these offensive coordinator positions. He's bouncing around the league. And everyone says, oh, he's great at offense. The Browns looked good last year on offense they made Josh Gordon really good. Obviously, Josh Gordon made that offense look really good too. Jordan Cameron, too, he came into the spotlight. Then he was supposed to do the same in Minnesota, but they've had a lot of personnel issues. Obviously, losing Adrian Peterson doesn't help. But Rex Ryan, look, I'd love to have him as a defensive coordinator. Put him on the Patriots. Undoubtedly, they're going to win a Super Bowl. Put him on Green Bay Packers even. Replace him with Don Capers. Don't think that team will go to the Super Bowl.
Oh, of course. He's a brilliant defensive mind. Don't get me wrong. He's brilliant defensive mind, but just offensively and as a head coach, I just don't think he's the guy. I just think he's one of the best D coordinators. Yeah. Yeah, so you agree with
is bad. It's a mess here. But, for this week at least, there's already one game going on. I'm sure everyone's watching that right now. Colts versus the Texans. The Colts are blowing out the Texans 17-0. Andrew Luck, 144 yards, 1 touchdown. He continues his MVP-type season. T.Y. Hilton has 3 receptions for 103 yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick has 0 yards passing. He's 0 for 4. Foster, 3 rush, 11 yards. Let's start there with our Week 6 preview. I mean, obviously this game's going to be a blowout, another Thursday night blowout.
Yeah.
We're seeing. But Andrew Luck has played great. This isn't like an epiphany, but, he's really stepped up.
He's special, man. I mean, look, Breeze, Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, even some people want to throw in Phillip Rivers, at least from a technical standpoint. I know his numbers can fluctuate and he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but at least from a technical standpoint, is like the guys who are like the most technically sound, most like complete passing quarterbacks. Let's throw Andrew Luck in there already. I mean, what more do you need? The guy has a nothing roster, and he's pulling a LeBron James or a Carmelo Anthony in the NBA, where he's essentially carrying a bad roster to the playoffs, which is what elite NBA guys like do all the time. And I'm sold, man. The guy, if you put a little bit better around him, he might even be in a Super Bowl already. And the guy is just great. He doesn't make dumb mistakes. He's a really good passer, shifty in the pocket. Indy really lucked, pun completely intended, into luck after they got rid of Peyton Manning. And unfortunately, it looks like another Thursday night, another game that, we might as well change the channel after the first quarter.
I mean, granted, we're not even watching it right now. I guess good thing, because we're not missing anything, because Indianapolis is blowing them out. Yeah, but think about it. Think about how lucky the Colts are, the Packers are. I mean, the Packers went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Going from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. I mean, Cleveland hasn't had a good QB since 1965 with Otto Graham. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Chicago's
Their franchise has not had a good QB since in 25 years. And here are the Colts and the Packers with two of the best back-to-back-to-back.
Yeah, the Colts and Packers, you want to talk about luck of the draw. I mean, they both, had Hall of Fame, top 10 ever quarterbacks and then fell into Hall of Fame top 10 ever quarterbacks. I mean, that is just the luck of the Irish right there, man. It's really funny. But, Luck's great, man. And he's having an MVP type season, especially considering, as we all know as football fans, that, that Colts roster, outside of T.Y. Hilton and a few little guys here and there, that Colts roster is really not very good. And the only reason they are good is solely because of Andrew Luck.
Yeah, and imagine how much worse it's going to be when they have to pay Andrew Luck next year for, I don't know, $180 million over 7 years. They're going to be terrible. Ryan Grigson's not a good GM, I don't think. And
no, he's
honestly, not. Honestly, that team is really bare. Akeem Nicks was a Pro Bowler. But last year he had 860-plus receiving yards and 0 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton's great. Reggie Wayne's, he's a Pro Bowl receiver, but he's on the decline of his career and coming off an ACL injury. Matt Bradshaw was good. He's actually having a resurgent season, but he's like one neck injury away from not playing anymore because he's very injured. I loved him on the Giants. I hope he doesn't get injured. God forbid. But he is very injury prone. And Trent Richardson is like the biggest bust ever. He has 4 carries for 4 yards today.
Right.
5 carries for 5 yards.
Right. That's what Andrew Luck's working with. And the two players that were at his level at their specific positions in Rasheem Mathis at D end and Reggie Wayne at receiver, 2 first ballot Hall of Fame players. Unfortunately, they were first ballot Hall of Fame. They were still in their prime years ago. They are first ballot Hall of Famers, but not anymore. They're Reggie Wayne and Rasheem Mathis in name only because they're getting old, which means that Andrew Luck has to rely on a bunch of young guys, the best of which is probably T.Y. Hilton. And I'm telling you, Grigson's done a terrible job. And, it would be a crime if they wasted Andrew Luck's prime by continuing to put bad pieces around him because, and we see it even in the NBA. I made the comparison he's like LeBron James or KG or Carmelo just dragging nothings to the playoffs. But even in the NBA, those guys needed to move elsewhere because you can't have a bunch of dregs around you in the playoffs. And I really hope they just build better around Andrew Luck, and even T.Y. Hilton because he's good too because it would be a crime if they wasted his prime.
Yeah, I would say what Peyton Manning had, but Peyton Manning also had Marvin Harrison, who was a Pro Bowl receiver, or a Hall of Fame receiver. He's going to be Edgerrin James, who's a fantastic running back. But that defense was not very good. I mean, Bill Polian's a fantastic, fantastic. I'm not.
But he also had a young.
Bill Polian, because I know diddly squat compared to him. But that defense was bad, and Peyton Manning was carrying a bad defense the whole entire time. And when they started losing their offensive weapons and getting a couple more defensive players, that's when they won, coincidentally. I mean, I want to see, people are going to bash me right now, but I want to see switch Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and I bet Peyton Manning has 4, maybe 3 or 4 Super Bowls. And Tom Brady's the one who has 1.
Maybe. Tom Brady's done a lot with very little, too. I mean, Tom Brady's been masterful at that, the way as we talked about in the last podcast, the Patriots are always screwing him over, and he's still finding ways to be 11-5. But
he has one of the best coaches ever and a great defense. Those 3 or 4 years when they won, they were fantastic top 10, top 15 defenses, and then ever since, every time they got to the Super Bowl, their defenses haven't been very good.
And since 2001, the AFC South, or since 2002 when they realigned the divisions, the AFC South has been much better since 2002 than the AFC East.
Yeah, well, that's because every team in that division has been terrible.
Right. But also, and also Peyton Manning, remember, Andrew Luck also has Reggie Wayne like Peyton Manning did and Rasheed Mathis like Peyton Manning did. But like I said, Rasheed Mathis and Reggie Wayne were younger and in the prime of their Hall of Fame careers when Peyton was there. Plus, they also had guys like, like you said, Marvin Harrison and, of course, I'm forgetting his name now. Oh, Dwight Freeney and other Hall of Famers who were also – yeah. So Rasheed Mathis and Reggie Wayne, I think if they were younger –
Robert Mathis. I know you're Lions-centric, Rasheed Mathis, but it's Robert Mathis.
Robert Mathis. Rasheed Mathis, back to the Lions, was also a defensive end. Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. I said Rocky getting carried off the field instead of Rudy. So right. we're trading off brain farts here, okay? Yeah. So all right, let's get off the blowout that is ensuing in Houston, and let's get to the rest of the games because there are a lot of games. Okay, this kind of gets into our entire discussion that we really don't have any idea who the good teams are and who the bad teams are really in the NFL. I mean, you can definitely say Seattle Seahawks are a good team and the Broncos are a good team, but after that, everyone else is right around they're all right around each other. I mean, the Ravens are 3-2, and they're playing Bucks, but everyone else, I mean, Lions are 3-2 against the 2-3 Vikings. The Panthers and Bengals are playing each other 3-2 and 3-1 there. The Bills and Patriots are playing each other. They're both 3-2. Steelers and Browns 3-2 and 2-2. Packers and Dolphins 3-2 and 2-2. Bears Falcons, both teams are 2-3. And then the Cowboys and Seahawks 4-1, 3-1. Giants 3-2. Eagles 4-1. That's our matchups. I mean, we're gonna have really great matchups this week in terms of records. I don't know if the games will actually hold up to that, but in terms of records, it's gonna be a great game.
Well, yeah. I mean, no, you're absolutely right. Like, other than Seattle and Denver and the 2 or 3 teams at the bottom, like almost everybody is right around each other. I mean, everyone feels like they could beat anybody. Everyone feels exactly the same. And record-wise, it will be good, and there will be some good stuff on the line. I'm very interested in Patriots-Bills because I want to see, because the Bills can probably do some things that can present the Patriots with problems. You would know this better being the AFC East guy, but the Bills legitimately play legitimately good defense. Yeah. They're a very good running team. And Kyle Orton, Kyle Orton's been in this league enough that he's not going to kill you. So, I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see if the Lions can get their kicking game situated and if they can, get that disappointing loss behind them and beat a Vikings team that I actually like Teddy Bridgewater in that offense this year, believe it or not. The defense, which I thought was going to improve, has not, but I like that offense. But I'm interested in that game. I'm also interested to see what the Bears do against Atlanta for a few reasons. Number one, Devin Hester facing his old team. That should be interesting. He's been chirping all week, and the Chicago media has been eating it up because the Chicago media loves Devin Hester. They've made that apparent in all these Chicago Sun-Times articles I'm curating and stuff. They've made it very clear how much they love and miss Devin Hester and how much they agree with Devin Hester's sentiments about how Jay Cutler's a sucker and not a real quarterback and yada yada. And if that Bears team gets housed in Atlanta, it's going to be ugly in Chicago because that team's already feeling the fire of their fans and that media. I mean, they're not pleased at all. They haven't been pleased from week 1, to their credit. That's a pretty good and pretty smart sports town. And then that Eagles-Giants game, even me, a West Coast guy who can be a bit West Coast biased and think that the media is way too East Coast biased, which it is, I will say an the East game is intriguing me. Whatever, that's where most of the country lives and that's where all the media is. I get why they're East Coast biased. But that NFC East game, that's intriguing to me. Giants-Eagles. I'm very interested in that because I think that's going to say a lot. Dallas-Seattle will be okay, but I think Seattle's going to blow them out. But Philly, New York, and even Cincinnati, Carolina, but especially Philly, New York, I'm very, very interested by that game.
Yeah, I mean, a subplot right here, Cowboys-Seahawks, as you mentioned, it's Tony Romo's return to Seattle, where he had the famous fumbled field goal.
Wow.
From the AFC divisional round.
Right.
You know, back in 2006 or 7 or whatever.
I believe it
So
was
that is an interesting subplot.
Yeah, it is.
And then,
And
you know, you look at the rest.
good too. What?
Go. You go
Carolina,
for it. Go.
Cincinnati, and then Green Bay, Miami. If there's one interesting subplot, NFC North fans, you already know this. Joe Philbin, the coach of Miami, was the offensive coordinator of the Packers. Most notably, during that 11 season, They had one of the best offenses of all time, although a lot of people argue, and I would tend to agree, that it was more Aaron Rodgers and Mark McCarthy's genius rather than Joe Philbin, who was just a guy, because he's kind of proven that in Miami that he's just a guy. But still, that'll be interesting, and Aaron Rodgers and Philbin have been talking buddy-buddy about each other, but I don't think that's going to be a great game.
It'll be interesting because
that much. What?
If the Dolphins lose that game, if the Dolphins lose that game, a lot of people, and Ryan Tannehill doesn't play well, a lot of people are going to be calling for Joe Philbin and Ryan Tannehill. It's going to be the overreaction again, because last week everyone was like, oh, you know, they beat the Raiders, they looked okay, you know, maybe they're turning the corner, they're on the upswing. And if they lose against Packers, Miami is gonna be pretty angry. And Green Bay, if they lose, I mean, everyone was saying they were going to go to the Super Bowl too. And that certainly throws a wrench in things. I love Aaron Rodgers. I think he's very underrated. I mean, you can say whatever you want about him not challenging Richard Sherman on that Monday Night Football game, whether it was playbook or whatever, or he just didn't want to throw there. I think he's really great because at the start of the season, he had thrown, I think, 20 interceptions total in the last 3 years. Just last year, there were 3 or 4 quarterbacks who threw 20 or more interceptions. Aaron Rodgers is really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's real underrated like that. But that'll be interesting. Bears Falcons, same thing. I mean, team that loses is 2-4, and especially the Bears. They were a team that possibly could have been a dark horse going into the playoffs. And then the Giants and the Eagles. I mean, I'm a Giants fan. I'm a homer. I'm a little scared about that game, even though the Eagles haven't looked great. It's at Philadelphia at night. They're going to go all blackout unis and everything. I'm interested to see how Odell Beckham Jr. comes in once again, coming off the second week. So that'll be a very interesting game. And then, you know, like you said, Patriots-Bills. That Bills game is going to be huge. Because if they lose that game and Kyle Orton just doesn't play well, questions will arise about, well, do you go back to E.J. Manuel because you just benched him and you're stunning his growth? Like, are you gonna sacrifice going and trying so hard to go 8-8 or 9-7 and not missing the playoffs at the expense of not knowing what E.J. Manuel is going to be?
Yeah, no, totally agree. There are some good games on the docket just because everyone is close, and there's going to be some winner-go-home games, even though it's still pretty early in the NFL season. But, yeah, no, a lot of interesting games. And I was interested in what you said, though, before all that. Like, you think Aaron Rodgers is underrated. See, I think people rate him very properly, maybe the best talent in the league and maybe the best quarterback in the league, which is what I think he is, because he does make all the throws and he is very efficient and never turns the ball over.
I think he was just getting a lot of flat. Like, okay, I work for a morning sports radio show on Mad Dog Sports Radio, Sirius XM 85, called M. Phillips. And one of the hosts, Evan Cohen, who also does a show at West Palm Beach on ESPN radio for them, he doesn't he still thinks Aaron Rodgers is a top 5 quarterback, but he was bashing, I don't know about bashing, but he was questioning whether you could really take him in a big spot because he avoided Richard Sherman for a whole entire game. And I don't know if that's game plan, I don't know what it is, but you can't, he was saying you can't discount the fact that he just didn't even try over there. Like, at least when Kirk Cousins this week on Monday Night Football, they went towards Richard Sherman's side. Like, yeah, Cam Chancellor blew the coverage against Deshaun Jackson. He was late on it, but at least they went to that side and at least challenged it, you know? So, and Philip Rivers threw at him, to Keenan Allen. Granted, Keenan Allen only had 3 receptions, 43 yards, but at least they challenged him. But I'm a really big Aaron Rodgers fan. I just think he hasn't won since 2009, but I bet every single team outside of maybe the Colts and the Broncos for one season would take him on their roster.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, he hasn't won a Super Bowl since he went on that Super Bowl run in 2010, but people are just so first of all, they're overreactionary, and second of all, titles always make smart sports fans dumb because sometimes the titles can be so overvalued. Titles are really a collection of a team being good, catching fire at the right time. It's a number of things. Like, people assume if you don't win a title, you're not good. Is Charles Barkley not a Hall of Famer because he didn't win a title? No. Is Dan Marino not a Hall of Famer because he didn't win a title? No. Is Barry Bonds not a Hall of Famer because he didn't win a title? No, he's not a Hall of Famer because he did steroids, but he's not a Hall of Famer because he didn't win a title. I mean, titles are, especially in baseball, as we all know, being a random postseason, titles can sometimes be random. Like, we have to stop, we want everything to be a team sport until we talk about titles, and then we want guys to win titles by themselves. But it's a team sport. That's not how it works. And Peyton Manning only has one title. Tom Brady has won a title in 10 years. Drew Brees has only one title. You want to know why? Because it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else you want from the guy. You want him to win a title every year? That's never going to happen. It's just. I don't understand why, because he didn't throw to Richard Sherman. You're right. Oh, he didn't throw to Richard Sherman. Oh, he didn't win since 2010. He's still maybe the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah. I mean, that's just my, I liked him. I'm just saying what he thought. Like, he would still take him in the top 5. I'm just, that's what people were saying, So
yeah, people are funny that way.
I would take him on my team, and you're making a great point. Like, people don't understand that this is a full 53-man roster game, okay? 53 men, you need to win a game. Like, Russell Wilson, I don't know what you would have rated him last year, but you probably would have said he was a game manager that benefited from a fantastic defense, a great running game, a solid offensive line, not one of the best, but like a solid offensive line, and a pretty solid coach, and a fantastic home field advantage. But, like, if you said, okay, Russell Wilson, I want you to drop back 50 times, probably not going to win a Super Bowl title for you every game. But if you do that with Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning and maybe even Tom Brady, I don't know him now, but, you can say what you want. But, like, Drew Brees, like, all those guys could do it if you had to lean on their arms. Like, Andrew Luck, if you put him on the Seattle Seahawks, oh, my God. Like, that offense would be incredible, and that defense would be incredible, and that team would probably win 3 or 4 straight and be like the next Patriots dynasty or the next Cowboys or 70s Steelers, 80s 49ers, any comparison you want to say.
Oh, I know. I mean, look.
Not saying it's not great.
This is an argument to me, I mean, just with titles in general in sports, that I've always banged my head against the wall because it's like, I don't devalue titles. I think you should compare titles when you're comparing guys of equal stature within their sport. So maybe we're comparing Brady and Montana because they both have multiple titles. So you take who you want because they both have multiple titles. But I'm not going to sit here and diss Marino or Peyton Manning and I'm applying it to all sports, Clayton Kershaw, whatever. Look, playoffs, we see it all the time. Look, the Giants 2007 run, the Cardinals run in 2011 in baseball, and the Cardinals run in 2006, and, some of the Giants runs in baseball, and some of the Ravens run 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. And even in basketball, it's rarer in the NBA, as we know, but even the 2011 Mavericks, I mean, sometimes you just have these teams that catch fire. Does that mean that the loser who was a great player is a loser and can never win? No, it just means that he and his teammates couldn't get it done, and they ran into a team that was just a buzzsaw for a couple of months or for one tournament. That's all it means, but we take it to mean so much greater. It's just ridiculous sometimes. It really is. If Andrew Luck never wins a Super Bowl or never gets to a Super Bowl and they continue to put bad talent around him, I'm not going to knock him if he's getting good numbers and dragging teams to the playoffs if he's not being built well around. It's not his fault, for any of that stuff. And, it's more, I don't know. I think we need to expand that argument more and compare it with equal parts and not just say, if you don't win a title at some point in your career, you're terrible. Because titles don't always mean you're good or bad. Sometimes titles can mean you were the best team at the right time, especially in baseball, but for the purposes of the NFL, it can happen in the NFL too. We've seen it before.
Yeah, and especially in the NFL where you're only affecting one side of the ball, you have no control over the other side of the ball. Like the
Right.
NBA, okay, this will be our last point because we really got off track here, but the NBA, you're one of 5 guys on your own team and you're playing both sides of the floor. In the NFL, you're only one of 11 guys on your own side of the floor, or on your own side of the ball, and you're dependent upon the other side of the ball. So
Right.
to like stops or score points.
Exactly.
So
In
it's
baseball, you're one guy and you can't control everything. So yeah, we both agree on this then.
yeah. So let's quickly go through these games after our huge tangent. Let's go through the biggest games here. So let's start with Patriot Bills. We previewed it. Who would be your winner here? Patriots are at the Bills, by the way.
I'm impressed by the Bills, but I still want to wait and see. So I'm gonna take the safe pick and pick the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said for the past 2 weeks, and I sound like a broken record. And everyone that listens to it wants to punch me, but Patriots by default until someone shows me something else. I mean, if they even if they lose this game, it's Patriots by default until someone else is on top at the end of the year, Week 17, and the Patriots are out of it. I will take the Patriots the whole entire time, especially if the Patriots heat up at the end of the year. Everyone's going to be bandwagon on top of the Patriots saying they're the most dangerous team. And it's Patriots for me. I think they finally figured out Tim Wright's coming in on the offense, and defense will play pretty well. And they always have really good success against the Bills. And I'm skeptical about Kyle Orton as well. And Kyle Williams, by the way, great defensive tackle. He's a little iffy going into this game, but we do have a couple days until that game. Let's go to the Packers and Dolphins, because I think there's a good storyline there, and I also think there's a good matchup. Packers, Dolphins, who do you see winning? I mean, you cover the Packers, I cover the Dolphins. Dolphins have some guys injured, especially Cortland Finnegan. They're coming off a bye week. Packers, they're on a hot streak. Where do you go here?
I'm going to go with the Packers because they are on the hot streak. They didn't have a bye week, but they had a mini bye having played on Thursday. They had 10 days off. And I just like the way they're rolling right now, and I really don't like what I see with the Dolphins. And I've thought what I've thought about the Jets, that everyone overreacts to the Dolphins, but they're going to prove to be 8-8 again, like the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC East. And I think that the reason that they're 8-8 is because they lose games like this, games that they can make a statement, especially at home where they've been notoriously bad. Give me the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, everything points to the Packers. The only thing I want to ask you about is that Packers offensive line. It's not the greatest thing.
No.
And the Dolphins have an elite pass rusher in Cameron Wake. Randy Starks is a pretty good tackle as well. Dolphins do have a couple injuries. I mean, Derek Shelby, their backup defensive end, got arrested for groping multiple women in a bar. But that's another story for another day. I feel like that's somewhat of an issue, and also the Packers haven't been running the ball very well outside of last week.
No, they haven't, but I don't know. There's just I look at history with these things, and Miami at home in a spot like this where they have a chance to really make a statement, they usually fall apart, and they don't start winning until later in the year when they play more AFC East stuff. So, you got a better beat on the Dolphins, so maybe it is biased on my part, but I'm still going to go with the Packers.
Yeah, and I mean, Mike Pouncey may come back. They may put him at guard. I have no idea. Mike Wallace is having a great year, though, by the way.
Yeah.
Under the radar, 20 receptions, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty solid year.
And Cameron Wake is a great pass rusher. You're right about that.
Absolutely.
He'll be in it. Yeah.
So let's go to the Panthers and Bengals. Panthers are a weird team. They went 2-0, and then they've been 1-2 since. Bengals obviously 3-0. Were getting blown out last week. I mean, both teams are kind of in limbo here. Where do you go on this one?
This game's in Carolina, right?
No, it was in Cincinnati.
Then I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I would go with Carolina if the game was in Carolina, but Cincinnati is so dominant at home. Carolina's defense has not been the Carolina defense we remember it. Their running game has struggled. I like the way Cam Newton looks. I really do. I think he's quietly improving as a pocket passer. I heard Greg Cosell, the film guy on Colin Cowherd's show, talking about how he's quietly making starting to be able to make all the throws. So I like that aspect, but I just think that Cam Newton's going to be going up against the buzzsaw, which is the Cincinnati Bengals at home. And like I said, considering the defense has been shaky this year and they haven't got the running game going and there's a lot on his shoulders, I think Cincinnati will win. If the game was in Carolina, though, I'd pick the Panthers.
Yeah, but the big thing about the Bengals, though, is A.J. Green left yesterday's practice. The turf toe that's been bothering him all season long re-aggravated it. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play, and if he doesn't, I don't know if that Cincinnati offense can play well. The Carolina defense has taken a step back, but you know what? I actually am thinking the Panthers squeak by in a mini upset here.
Wow.
AJ Green really scared that. AJ Green is one of the best receivers in the league, and Andy Dalton, for some reason, can't hit him all the time on deep balls. And AJ Green makes him look really good. If he can't play, watch out. I don't think the Bengals play well, and there'll be some questions there. Let's go to the Bears and Falcons.
Passing game.
Yeah, but not like A.J. Green, man. I mean, there is. I'm not going to deny that. Mohamed Sanu, Marvin Jones.
Right. No, but A.J. Green, you're right. Yeah, he's one of the best. He's one of the best receivers in the game. I mean, no question.
Bears Falcons. Bears offense hasn't looked great, even though they have Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall. But both guys have really been hampered by injuries, especially Brandon Marshall. Martellus Bennett has had a fantastic year so far, by the way. Falcons are completely up and down. Julio Jones is a stud, though. He is a stud. When he is healthy, top 3 wide receiver, maybe best receiver right now just because Calvin Johnson's hurt and everything. But I don't even know where to go. Honestly, I may just go Falcons at home because they're 2-0 at home. The Bears do not play well at home. I mean, on the road. And Jay Cutler, I don't know what to think about him. He's very up and down, makes good throws and very bad throws.
Well, this game is interesting. I will say this, and you haven't had the beat on the NFC North, but the Bears have actually been better on the road at least this year than they have been at home. But still, because 2 of their 3 losses have actually been at home, believe it or not. Even still, though, I'm also going to go with the Falcons because the Falcons are really elite at home, and the Bears, man, they don't do that much right, do they? They turn the ball over a lot. They can't play defense. I mean, there's only so much a whiz-bang passing offense can do when you've got so many other major flaws. And when you go into a place like the Georgia Dome where Matt Ryan and those Falcons have been elite the last several years in the Matt Ryan era, where they essentially don't lose at home except if it's a big playoff game. I'm with you. Give me the Falcons.
All right, last 2 games here: Cowboys, Seahawks, and Giants, Eagles. 3 out of the 4 teams are in the NFC East, and it'll tell a lot about the NFC East and who is a contender and who is a pretender. I'm going to take the Seahawks on the road. I don't care that the Cowboys are running the ball well. Tony Romo is managing the game more. I think the crowd noise is going to kill them. Seahawks are unbeatable at home. They've only had 1 road loss in their last 18 games, and that was to the Cardinals, where Carson Palmer threw 4 interceptions, but that defense played fantastic that day. But I don't think the Cowboys play well at home, and there will be a lot of questions. People will kind of get off that Cowboy bandwagon there. And the Seahawks, Russell Wilson plays fantastic. Marshawn Lynch, I think they really just exposed that Dallas defense, even though it has been better, has been a lot better, but they do expose that defense in terms of Giants-Eagles. I don't know whether to go with my head or my heart here, but I want to see the Giants do well on the road on this little hot streak. Yeah, they've won 3 in a row, but I want to see them do it on the road against a good team, and I'm going to go with the Eagles in a close one. Hopefully I'm wrong, because I hate Philadelphia.
I'm sure you do, being a Giants fan. For the Cowboys Seahawks, I mean, I don't think there could be a more obvious bet. The Seahawks, not only do they not lose at home, they don't lose by not only do they always win at home, I should say, they don't even give the opposing teams the dignity of losing by 7 points. They destroy people in Seattle. They humiliate people, especially big games like this against teams that they want to prove themselves to. Even though the Cowboys have been mediocre, they're still a big brand. I think the Seahawks are not only going to win, they're going to win big. I mean, after all, you even said it. Russell Wilson has lost once at home, including the playoffs, and it was that game to Arizona. And we all know Arizona is much better built to play Seattle than Dallas is. They're a good defense, and even with Carson Palmer's 4 picks, they still have such an elite roster they can still get a win in Seattle. Give me Seattle big against Dallas, and I mean big. And Giants, Philly, I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to go with what your heart is screaming, and I'm going to say the Giants because I loathe the Giants, being a Packer fan, because the Giants have gotten our numbers in some NFC Championship games.
Yeah.
Going back to the Brett Favre days, they've come into Lambeau Field and beaten us. So I'm not a big Giants lover. I don't even like the NFC East at all. In fact, the Eagles are the only NFC East team I've ever really liked. But I think the Giants are going to win in Philadelphia. You already know I think Eli Manning's pretty overrated, but in this system he's been playing well. I like the way they're playing, and I don't necessarily love Philadelphia enough to say they're a lock at home. And I just like the pieces on the Giants more, so I'm going to go Giants to win on the road.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, the thing is I'm worried about that Eagles offensive line. They haven't run the ball well. There's all these reports over the last couple days saying that Chip Kelly and LaShawn McCoy are at odds in terms of the last game that happened where LaShawn McCoy apparently took himself off the field. That's what Chip Kelly said. And then LaShawn McCoy refuted that statement by Chip Kelly by saying that Chip Kelly actually took him out of the game. So there's like this weird dichotomy there. And, I mean, I'm just going with it because when I bet on the Giants, they usually lose. So usually I bet for the other team, and then the Giants win. But I might have just jinxed it. So I'm going with like triple and double negatives here and playing with my own brain. So I don't know what just happened. But
I'll go Giants.
All right. Well, another great Extra Point podcast with you, Adam.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, it was a good one. Nice rant, nice joking. You called Rasheem Mathis Robert Mathis, and I called Rocky Rudy. So
it's okay. We'll
whatever.
get it. Eventually, we have to put this on the FoxSports.com newsletters that we all curate, right? So it'll get better. It'll get snappier. Stick with us,
Maybe we'll get one viewer, by the way. I don't know who the one viewer is, but thank you for watching for the last half hour. I don't know if you're just listening or something, but you either must be really bored or actually like our voices. So thank you.
Right, or that Thursday night game is yet another boring blowout that they're like, well, anything's better than this.
Yeah, actually, Texans have scored 2 touchdowns.
Oh!
Foster with a rush down.
And yeah, so finally.
24-14 heading into the second quarter. Or, 8:22 left in the second quarter. Yeah, Houston
all
just
I was
scored.
rooting for was Thursday night games to be just good because they've been abysmal. Maybe our dreams will come true.
Yeah, maybe. But until next week, Adam, you can tweet at us at Blue Collar God for Adam, at AGBerg12 for myself. And until next week, enjoy your weekend.
See you later, everybody.